Hello and welcome to the Rugby Show here on the 42.ie. We are looking back on Ireland's victory over South Africa and looking ahead to the next couple of tests as well. My own name is Gavan Casey and I'm delighted to be joined by former Ireland head coach Eddie O'Sullivan. Eddie, how's tricks?
I'm good, thanks.
Cheers for coming. We've dragged you across from the west. We might start, I suppose, Eddie, with the result. We were just talking before we came on air, and I don't think either of us were predicting South Africa were going to come to Dublin and turn us over, and maybe that took away from some of the buzz leading up to the game. But certainly, if you were looking for a performance from Ireland, you got it. If you were looking for a performance from some of the new kids on the block, we got that as well. Like, if you look at the team that played, I think it was only 8 of the team that had beaten England, which was Ireland's last test. So for such a large turnover, Ireland dealt fairly well with it.
No, it was a very good performance. I think the accuracy of the performance, again, there was nothing too spectacular about it. We just were very workmanlike, and we played good territory, good execution of the kicking, defended really well. Really, South Africa were never in the game. There was never at any point where you say, God, these guys might get a break here and catch us. So we were like in cruise control for 70 minutes, and then in the last 10 we scored 21 points in 10 minutes, which is like, where did that come from? But in a sense, you could see the fight going out of South Africa. And this is a South African team at the moment that I think is playing on emotion. You know, they're not as bad as they looked in the last 10 minutes last Saturday, but they're not that good either. You know, when you see where they are, I mean, their rugby championship was up and down. Now, if you just take one step back from it, their first year under Coetzee has been the worst, they say, in South African history, and that first game was losing to Ireland in the summer tour. So he's been on a roller coaster. They circled the wagons after that first season was so bad, and they brought in extra coaches and they battened down the hatches. And then they played really well against France in the France's summer tour. But we know the French don't tour that well. They're end of a long season. They're trying to get to the beach rather than the rugby pitch, but they read a lot into that. They expanded their game, but then they hit reality in the rugby championship, and they beat Argentina. They had 2 draws with Australia, which is not bad. Australia are a decent team, but the big black mark was that they got absolutely shellacked by 50 points for New Zealand. But then the final game of the Rugby Championship, backs to the wall, they almost beat New Zealand, lose by a point, and you're wondering, no, which South African team is coming to Dublin? And my kind of concern was that if we had a team that played their guts out against New Zealand in the last Rugby Championship game, which was really all emotion, it was an emotional performance. There was the same emotion at all there last Saturday. You could see it from the off. I think we had more emotion than they had, and we were much more organised, and we knew our game plan. And I think, again, if you just get below the skin of it, I don't know what South Africa's game plan was. It was catastrophic from the off.
Is there a chance like that, given they had poured so much emotion into that game against New Zealand, that was maybe their last stand of the championship, and now they're going into a period where there is going to be wholesale changes with Erasmus coming in, that maybe some of the players at least sort of have thrown their hat at this winter and thought, let's just get it out of the way, get home?
No, I you'd hate to think that that's what happened, because they're representing their country. You know, I mean, whatever you say about, you know, if you're playing for a club, you can go through a bad patch, or there's a new coach coming in, you know, fellas go, well, things are going to change. But when you're playing for your country and you're being capped, that's a big deal. And I just felt that the energy that you normally get from the Springboks in that shirt didn't arrive. Now, the other side of it, I suppose, as well, is that they know now, if they've this autumn tour for them, they play Ireland, they play Italy, they play France, and they play Wales. They were coming here with kind of, let's get a clean sweep here, take the pressure off the team, because it's a long summer or winter for us, summer for them in the Southern Hemisphere. Like, they don't play again until next June, and there's going to be like 7 months of discontent in the media and where's the programme going. They've had really, really bad year and a half. So if they had a big autumn tour here, they could take the pressure off themselves, relax, get things back on track. But they have a bad tour here now. It's going to be more of the same kind of ongoing debate in the media when they get home. So they needed a good result. And for that reason, it wasn't that they lost on Saturday, they actually capitulated in the end, and that's been really historically bad result. And you know, in fairness to Francois Lowe, at the game, said it was one of their worst performances ever. So what a great way to get your autumn tour off. What a great first step. So the thing, why you're not going to take anything from Ireland, because you've got to play the team in front of you. This South African team had a lot of things wrong with it on Saturday, and we exposed it in the end. And that's what, if Ireland ever get into that space, the top teams will expose us. So Ireland were very, very professional in the way they went about the game. Very solid game plan, and executed it very well. But you saw at the back end of it where South Africa just were shambolic almost.
Yeah, you mentioned as well that they might be overly dependent on the emotion of the occasion, and that's been something level at Ireland in the past, that maybe we've gone into these games too much. We certainly weren't on Saturday.
You would hope that Ireland have moved away from that space, and I think if you look at us, go back 10 years even, we're now like regularly in the top 3 or 4 or 5 in the world, and those world rankings, don't get me started on it, because if you look at them now, your head would snap back, because some of the rankings are off the wall. But having said that, we've been at the top table of world rugby for a while now, and we've got away from this. It's all about emotion for it. We're a much different team, and you saw that on Saturday. That we brought the emotion, and we're never going to lose that, and you can't lose that. But the clinical approach to the game, the execution, the clarity of the game plan, whether you think it's a great game plan or not, it's the fact the team went out and executed it really, really well. That's what it's about, and that's how you stay where you are in the pecking order in the world rankings. Yeah,
big time. When we mentioned the new crop and a lot of young guys involved, not even necessarily young, but inexperienced guys at international level. Andrew Conway impressed. We had Bundee Aki coming in, making his debut, a much celebrated debut in the Irish media. What did you make of...
Not so much early in the week.
No, it was funny how that turned around, although, there are other forces at play there. Aki, I suppose, you and I were just discussing before we came on here that maybe it was because of the furore surrounding him wearing Irish green that he was awarded a lot of 8s and 9s in player ratings, when actually it was an impressive debut, but it wasn't spectacular by any stretch of the imagination.
I think we were trying to kind of roll back a lot of the nonsense that was spoken earlier in the week, and got a lot of airtime and column inches, and I just couldn't get my head around it. Why are we having this debate now? What did Bundee Aki do differently than CJ Standard, Jared Payne? There was I think it's 7 or 8 players now have come through that system, and there was always somebody raised their head, but this turned into a national debate. I thought that horse,
national debate.
The horse had left the stable a long time ago, for that one, and I thought it was probably a bit unfair on him that it went to that stage. I think it is a genuine debate, but it's been addressed by World Rugby eventually, kicking and screaming, and they've even pushed it out to 2020 again, which I think is kind of fudging it a wee bit. Yeah. But I think the 5-year rule is the right way to go. 3 years was a bit stupid, and I think we all knew that. It's going to be 5 now eventually, and I think go one step further if you want to say, if you live here for 5 years, you want to play for Ireland, take out an Irish citizenship, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're going to die for the jersey, what's wrong with having a passport to go with it? So, but to have that debate this week, to me, made no sense whatsoever, because, as I said, this has happened many times before, and maybe because there wasn't much buzz around this game. The Springboks were here for the 6th time in I think 12 or 13 years, and we've beaten them 4 of the 6 times, and we'd beaten them down in South Africa last year. So there was kind of no mystique or mystery about the Springboks, and maybe had something else to talk about, and that was a good place to start. But I thought it was a lot of hype about really nothing, and I thought I felt bad for the player. Because he was in the middle of a firestorm that had nothing to do with him, that other people had done the same thing as he had. Now, maybe he said a couple of things earlier that people latched onto, but that doesn't matter. So I felt bad for him, but having said that, I thought his performance then was very solid. I don't think he had a barnstormer, I don't think he lit it up. But to me, that's okay. Your first cap at that level, to come in and tick all the boxes, don't make any mistakes, get your job done. And I think that's the way Gary Ringrose started when he got his first cap. Nothing spectacular, made no mistakes, did all the right things. He had a very solid first cap. It wasn't 9 out of 10, but your first cap doesn't have to be 9 out of 10. 6 or 7 out of 10 is good enough. And I thought, to be fair to him, considering the week he had, hats off, he did a great job.
Yeah, he's another option now in Ireland's centre, and I think it's a position or an area in the pitch which is becoming very congested.
It's
very
becoming
quickly.
A headache now, which is great. It's a headache for the coach, and who plays where. It looks like now that if you look at the 12 channel, it's Bundee Aki. I think McCluskey and Ulster has been lighting up this year, makes a strong case. It looks like Ringrose will come back. Does he go to 13? If he goes to 13, what happens to Robbie Henshaw? Henshaw, I think, has always been to the manor born as an internationalist, whether he plays 12 or 13. But the problem will be now is, what do Leinster do when Ringrose comes back? Does Henshaw go back to 12, Ringrose to 13? But if Henshaw's to play 13 for Ireland, he needs to play there every week. That's the problem. Like, it's fine to throw Phil in there for a test game, but if he's playing his straight at 12, and there are different nuances that can hurt you at the top end of the game, and that's not taken away from Robbie Henshaw. Robbie Henshaw is more than capable of playing 13 or 12, but where's his future? If his future's at 13 for Ireland, then if he's going to partner up with Bundee Aki as our frontline 10 and 12, he has to play there. But then what happens to Ringrose? And that's a management issue. But the bottom line is we have no seriously good strength in the middle of the field and people who can cover those positions and, you know, hit the ground running, which is a great thing, but it does create its own other little headaches.
Yeah, big time. And a couple of lads not mentioned there. I know you're a huge fan of Rory Scannell, and you maintain that at Munster he might be underutilised a little bit at 12.
I feel like a voice in the wilderness, but I keep feeling that Munster have got their midfield back to front. I think Farrell is a bit like McCluskey. He's a big man. He's a very strong ball carrier, gets his hands free in the contact area. Whereas Scannell, to me, is a more natural footballer, great distributor, more of an instinct player, a bit not far away, and I don't want to elevate him too early, but he's in the same kind of mould as Brian O'Driscoll in terms of his reading of the game.
Yeah.
He's an instinctive player, but he's playing 12, and I think Farrell is struggling at 13. I think Scannell is wasted at 12, and I think Munster are trying to expand their game. I think if they flip those guys around, it would make a big difference to how their engine runs, you know. But that's just my opinion. But from what I've seen, and I think Scannell is another guy that can force himself into that mix in the Irish midfield. He again ticks all the boxes, and he's probably been Munster's best back for the last couple of seasons. You could argue himself and Zevo. But and we won't go there. But definitely talking about Scannell, yeah, I think he's right in there in the mix, you know. And look, that's fantastic. Like when you're coaching and you're trying to pick a team, it's those type of headaches you want. It's not like, oh, what are we going to do to fix this? You're saying, which is going to give me my best outcome here, and you've got 3 or 4 possibilities. But they're the guys now really are, you know, putting their hand up.
Big time, yeah. I mean, one of the areas obviously that we would have been a little bit more concerned about, given Mr. Zebo's absence, and it looks like it's going to be a prolonged one, was the back three. But you see Jacob Stockdale come in. I mean, this is a guy who made his debut for Ulster in January of last year.
It doesn't solve the back three, but let's talk about Stockdale for the moment.
Because I think he's an option at 15 down the line maybe as well, but we might get to that in a second. Let's just talk about the game he had at 11. Very impressive again, and like, it's hard to believe he's 21, not just the size of him, but the way he plays the game.
I'm not trying to be like the Monday morning quarterback, but I actually have been watching Stockdale like just even since the start of the season. He has been phenomenal for Ulster. Like the 3 guys in Ulster at the moment that are really lighting it up and keeping Ulster like ticking over, because they haven't shot the lights out yet, is Stockdale, McCluskey and Charles Peto, you know, to be fair. But if you see anything good that happens for Ulster, even when Peto is making it happen, it's Stockdale and McCluskey are involved as well. And I think Stockdale, like, and I think, to be fair, in terms of the back 3, and to be fair to Conway, had Earls not been injured, I think our 2 best wings this season, to be fair, are Stockdale and Earls. Now, Earls unfortunately got injured, but and again, Conway did a great job. But having said that, Stockdale has been outstanding. He's really kind of played his way into that position, and I was delighted to see it. And I really wasn't worried about him, because he's an absolute monster of a kid, and he's got all the skills. He's a very good footballer. No, full back is another debate. I'm not for him to play full back for Ireland, he has to play full back week in, week out for Ulster, and then see what happens over a season. But I think, yeah, he was outstanding. I think the problem going to the full back is that Rob Kearney again had an excellent game, hugely experienced, but Rob is so injury prone at the moment, and I think that's a big worry, that if Rob goes down again, as he tends to, he's always had hamstring trouble right through his career, and that could happen like the captain's run the day before a game. It's just so unpredictable, particularly someone with that history. If he were to go down, who's our full back? That's the debate now. Where does the full back come from? So it's somebody who's got to play there every week. Now Carberry's playing there, but I think he's a fabulous footballer, but I don't know he's an international full back yet. Now Brian O'Driscoll would say he's on his way to that. I'm still between. I think he's still a phenomenal 10. I think he's a beautiful 10 because he goes to the line, his distribution. You saw the cross kick last Saturday for Darren Sweetenham. Yeah, like that was world class. Like off a turnover. Like a lot of cross kicks are setups. You know, when you run those cross kicks, they're almost pre-called. So the winger drops wide, you run your unders line, tightens the defence, and boom, out it goes. That was off a turnover. Like that wasn't pre-called. They just read it. He saw Sweeten was wide, looked up, saw the space, and he had to hit the grass. Wasn't into his hands. So, like that's why I'm a big fan of Carberry. But I think he's a phenomenal 10. Will he make an international 15? We'll see. But that's going back to that space there outside of Rob Kearney there's a bit of a vacuum around it. There's no obvious one. Well, there is, but he's not in the squad.
The elephant in the room.
You know, and maybe if they have to do it in the Six Nations, they have to do it. But definitely Zebo is the next man up, you know, and some maybe say should be the first man up. Yeah, but having said that's just the vacuum in the back three. I think we've plenty of wings now.
Yeah.
You know, we've plenty of centres. Who's Johnny Stexton's backup now? You know, like at this moment in time,
Carberry probably
looks like Carberry. So is he going to be a 15 or a 10? Because
but
again,
is there an argument to be made he could end up at 12 as well? The way the game is going,
Carberry
midfield, yeah.
I don't think in the modern game he'd be physically big enough to, like, with the ball. You've got to remember that when you pick somebody, he's got to play both sides of the football. It's not the NFL, so. With the ball, yeah, Carberry's a superb footballer, and at the line he's as comfortable as anybody in the world. It's just when you send big guys like maybe a McCluskey or a Bundee Aki, his own team running at him, then he's very hard to hold the gain line with him. So that's the trade-off for him. So I don't think, considering the resource we have at 12, I don't think he's going to figure in that configuration.
Yeah, just sticking with Kearney briefly. I mean, he's a guy who gets an awful lot of criticism, I think, largely from people outside.
I've always rated him as a phenomenal footballer. I think he's had his ups and downs, which he's got flayed on, but his ups and downs have been based around his been on the field and been out with injuries. He had long layoffs, and especially with hamstrings, it's a nightmare injury because there's no warning. It doesn't get sore. Usually it just goes.
Yeah.
It might get tight, but he's had a very unlucky run with injuries. But when he's been in the whole of his health, and he's got a number of games under his belt, you saw last Saturday, the guy he's flying it. You know, maybe his evasion skills are not as sharp, but that could be down to the fact that, again, when you're practicing those evasion skills, you put huge pressure on your hamstrings. But I think there's no question I put Kearney under any day. I wouldn't blink an eyelid. So I think people have been harsh on him, but I think the harshness is a bit unfair because of the injuries he's had to deal with right through his career.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see how Ireland do look to solve that gap at full back. If there is a gap, if Kearney does go down again, I suppose it's not impossible. But looking at Fiji now, we've already seen, I suppose, a good few of the young lads get a chance against a top tier nation, South Africa. Like, this is a chance, I guess, to experiment that a little bit more. Maybe some of the things that you're suggesting there, Joe Schmidt might actually try. But is there anybody, I suppose you're going to say Stuart McCloskey should get a run out?
Yeah, I think McCluskey deserves a look in there, but then again he might feel like that Bundee Aki needs another game under his belt, and I can understand that. But I'd be a fan of McCluskey's as well from what I've seen this year. So I'll be interested to see what he does there. Maybe, you know, would he push Bundee Aki to 13 or something and see how that works, you know. But I don't know, it's hard to get inside the coach's head, but I feel that McCluskey certainly is a guy has got one cap in Twickenham, which he acquitted himself very well 2 seasons ago. He's been in the wilderness. Yeah, he's been in the wilderness. I think he deserves to get back in there, you know. No, but we'll see how that breaks.
Yeah, but are there any other players, I mean, forget about, say, Joe Schmidt, from your own perspective, that you'd like to see get a chance, or anybody who...
Well, I would say like James Ryan starting, you know, maybe giving Toner a rest, you know. You might see, like, he might want to rest as well Ian Henderson, you know.
He had his phenomenal game again.
Yeah, well, Henderson... The problem for Henderson maybe to start his career is he was what we call a tweener. He could play with second row, back row. And it's not a huge deal anymore, except if he plays in the second row, he's got to jump further up the line. Yeah. And I've always felt that he would have grown up jumping at the tail, where the flight of the ball is in the air and you've much more time to gauge the trajectory of the ball. If you're at two, like, it's in a flash and you get it, or you're taking it's a much, and you need to practice that. Like, I've seen him, the way I said is, I've seen him play lock and miss flat throws that he wouldn't be accustomed to taking. Now, that's a very fixable problem. But he's certainly, outside of jumping in the line out, like, the guy is a monster, but he's always brought that physicality combined with, he's got great feet for a big guy. He steps people. It's not all just route one. He can step around guys, and I thought he had a super game again on the weekend. So, like, I think the Fiji game, it's about the coach looking down the depth chart here, because the summer tour was great for that because the Lions were gone. This is a one-off chance again. Like, there's no chance in the Six Nations to go down the depth chart. Like, you've got to put your best foot forward. And I got to tell you, like, Argentina are a dangerous team at the moment. They're really looking for a victory. I mean, they put it up to England on the weekend, but so I think he's got to try and keep his powder somewhat dry for the Argentina game, and the Fiji game give guys a run. There's plenty of possibilities, you know. I mean, there's Rory Scannell coming to that frame there. Does he get in? You know, does he start sweetening him off his on the wing for his first start? All that, they're all possibilities. Maybe Marmion gets a run, you know, it's a first start. Like, there's all those possibilities without going too far outside the core of the squad. But I don't know how to judge it, because Fiji, John McKee is the coach of Fiji, former Buccaneers coach, and knows Connacht well. He coached a bit in Connacht. He's a very, very good coach. He's done a really good job with them, and he'd be the kind of coach who put together a good game plan, you know, that if they click, they could cause you problems. So you can't just kind of throw caution to the wind. And ironically, like, if don't get me started in the world rankings, they're ranked above Argentina. They're one place above Argentina as of this morning, which I find that hard to believe, but that's where they are, you know. No disrespect to them, but so Fiji, you never know what to expect, because we know if they click and they get in their front foot and they get the bit between their teeth, that they can play. But you just probably see Ireland just choking the life out of them, you know, as the game goes. But a game that there is room for experimentation, no question about it, in terms of selection.
Absolutely, yeah. They strike as kind of an ideal test for a lot of those young players you mentioned there. Eddie, that's all we've got time for. Thanks as per usual for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the game at the weekend. We will be back on Friday, I believe, for another episode of Close Calls. If I'm wrong about that, apologies. We'll be back soon anyway. Cheers for tuning in, and we'll see you soon. Take care.